I'm Matt Zahn. Thanks for joining us on the CBS News Chicago stream. With just over a week to go before the Bears open up the regular season, we've got some big news to talk about this afternoon. The team's top brass making a huge announcement after nearly 40 years with the organization. Longtime team president and CEO Ted Phillips says this season will be his last. He's retiring at the end of the 2022 season. Joining us now with more on really what this means in a wide-ranging factors for this franchise is 670 The Score's Chris Emma. Chris, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I guess first of all, what does this move mean to the Bears now and to the future? Ted Phillips has obviously been here for a long time. Where do we go from here?
Well, in the short term, it's a bridge to what's next for the Bears, and that is getting the Arlington Park property secured, breaking ground on that potentially at the end of this year, if not early next year. And obviously, from the football operation standpoint, is figuring out kind of what's next with this regime and building forward with Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. But so much of that team president and CEO role is beyond the football ops, and that's why, frankly, Ted Phillips has been able to last this long and to have the career that he has, because he's done a lot of work behind the scenes, being the right-hand man for George McCaskey and his entire family. He's very trusted and loyal servant to that organization. And look, he's taken a lot of heat from the fan base. There's been a lot of frustration with management, and he's been an easy target. But George McCaskey's been very pleased with what he's done.
Yeah, what do you think Ted Phillips' legacy is? Obviously, on the financial side, you can't argue with what have been positive results for the team, but on the field, there just hasn't been a lot of success with him at the top of this organization.
Yeah, look, I mean, these NFL franchises are growing exponentially financially. It's going to happen. Like, I could be the president of an NFL franchise that just keeps growing and growing. That's not to take away from Ted Phillips, but there's a lot of stuff that he's done behind the scenes in terms of taking the Bears from being more of that mom and pop shop organization towards becoming more of a corporation, that kind of franchise. And he's done a lot behind the scenes that George McCaskey really sees as doing a terrific job. From the fan base's perspective, though, I don't think any fan base or any fan is going to celebrate, this team's making a lot of money. Like, you want to see it turn into results, and they've not really grown the business significantly up until recent years, and now looking towards a next venture out in Arlington Heights. But the football results speak for themselves. They made 6 playoff appearances in Ted Phillips' 23 years. This would be his 24th. They've had 6 different head coaches in that span. He's overseen the hiring of 5 of them. They've had 5 different general managers in that span. He's had a say in hiring all of them. So there's been a lot of failures and inconsistencies within this organization. And they've made a lot of strides organizationally, but honestly, from the football standpoint, it's not been good enough.
Is it possible, though, he gets a little too much blame because, obviously the McCaskies are involved in this as well, all the guys making the decisions that they hire. He becomes sort of a punching bag?
Yeah. Look, man, I mean, people want a target. They want somebody to blame when things aren't going well. There's no head of football operations above the general manager. So every time the Bears fire a general manager and a head coach, it's Ted and George sitting together trying to figure out what's next. And they not have the savvy to know the trends in the NFL, what they should be looking for in the right candidate. And there have been so many missteps along the way. That said, Ted has taken a back seat now on the football ops side. He's no longer the layer between Ryan Poles, the general manager, and George McCaskey as the chairman. He stepped out of the way. He's solely focusing on the business side. I'd expect that model is going to continue with the next team president. And with that said, I think they really need to look towards something different. For all the sentiments that the McCaskey family feel for Ted Phillips, they have to look at something different, acknowledge his inconsistencies and his missteps. They need to find something different now.
All right, and I saw you write about this afternoon on 670thescore.com about maybe what they should be looking for in a replacement for Ted Phillips. It seems to me like the McCaskey way, the Bears way, would be to go to somebody in-house, but possibly maybe looking outside that might be the best for the future of this franchise.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to hear names like Karen Murphy, who's the team's CFO right now, Scott Hagel, who's the VP of Communications, one of the top executives within that organization, Cliff Stein, who's the general counsel as well. I think all 3 will be the internal candidates. No disrespect to any of them, but I think the Bears are better seeking somebody outside the organization. Like, you can't look at this as saying Ted And I know they want to throw the bouquets this way, but the results speak for themselves. Everybody within that organization, including the three that I mentioned, had been there alongside Ted Phillips. You need something different. You need a new voice. The Broncos just hired a team president out of the NFL league office. The Washington Commanders 2 years ago, Dan Snyder brought in Jason Wright, former NFL running back, Northwestern graduate, also got his MBA, University of Chicago. You got some good candidates along those lines you can look for. Familiar names as well. You know, Trace Armstrong is certainly going to be a hot name. The super agent works with athletes first. You're going to hear Gary Fensick potentially. He's 68 years old, but if he wants an opportunity, he's been very successful in the business world. Certainly somebody to consider as well. You know, another phone call I would make is Jim Phillips, who's the former Northwestern athletic director, currently the commissioner of the ACC. That ACC right now is a sinking ship because of conference realignment. Jim Phillips would be excellent in that role. Whoever it is, whatever route they go, I believe they need a new voice and somebody with a forward-thinking perspective.
And obviously, Ted Phillips currently heavily involved in looking into the new potential stadium project out at Arlington Heights. The Bears made an announcement about a public meeting next week. What are your thoughts on where we stand with that? And, you know, this could be, you know, something that does add at least to Ted Phillips' legacy if he is a big role in building some sort of bright, fancy new stadium for the Bears.
Yeah, and that's going to be Ted Phillips' last act as team president as far as things are scheduled right now. Like, he's going to be the one seeing through, finalizing that deal, breaking ground on that, and he'll retire and go off into the sunset and feeling really good about what he did and bringing that franchise forward. This is a huge step. It's not just a stadium. Like, this is a step toward being a significant corporation, like we talked about. It's no more we're leasing the local historic stadium. We're building our own thing. We're creating our own partnerships. We're making business deals left and right around this property. That's what Ted Phillips is going to do to bridge the gap between end of his tenure and then next president. That's a heck of a legacy to leave. And for all the frustrations and everything that's gone through his tenure, and, you know, frankly, a lot of fans are celebrating today. It's a good place to leave off knowing that you left that franchise in the right place and building that state-of-the-art stadium.
All right, switching gears a bit to the on-the-field product. We obviously well documented the lack of success over the last 40 years or so with Ted Phillips in charge. But, you know, so far, at least for me, I like what I've seen from the new general manager, Ryan Poles. Matt Eberflus's message seems to be connecting with the team. What are your thoughts on what you've seen so far from this new regime as we head into this first season with them?
You know, Matt, I see a vision and a plan. I see Matt Eberflus coming in from day one, establishing that culture and getting the buy-in. You know, the HITS principle thing, I rolled my eyes a bit when I first heard it. I think a lot of people did too. But look, man, that's the culture. That is what he's trying to instill with this group. And it means a lot when you hear a guy like a Jalen Johnson or Eddie Jackson saying, I didn't get it at first and now I'm all in. That is the culture of hustling. It's playing the right way, playing hard. And it's Ryan Poles from the top now above Matt Eberflus is bringing in that personnel, guys who can fit that culture. I think this team's going to struggle this year because it is a transitional season and it's a roster, quite frankly, doesn't have that top-tier talent, but these guys are going to play hard. You've seen it in training camp throughout these practices. These are the hardest practices I've seen in the NFL. You can see it in these preseason games, and I know it's 2s against 3s or that kind of thing. You're not getting the top-tier guys, but they're playing hard. Like, it's noticeable. That's the culture, and that's the buy-in. That's what year one is all about. In addition to building around Justin Fields and creating what you want with that offensive identity, it's establishing a winning culture as a team. And they're going to take their lumps this year, but I see a commitment to what Eberflus and Poles have brought in, and that's certainly worth noting. It's inspiring to see, if you're a Bears fan, that these guys really want to be a part of building this thing forward.
Well, you mentioned Justin Fields. Obviously, that's one of, if not the most important thing in this 2022 season, and provided some reason for hope in that last preseason game against the Browns with Luke Getsy calling the plays. That offense looked pretty good, albeit in the preseason. Signs of hope. I myself remain a little skeptical that they have enough weapons, enough on the offensive line to protect Fields. But what are your thoughts about what we can see from Fields in this all-important second year?
Yeah, you're going to see progress in a scheme that fits Justin Fields. I think that's what you're going to see of him this year. And he might not light it up. He might not be, Pro Bowl, that type quarterback that you want to see him ultimately become. But what you're going to see this season is a scheme that's built for Justin Fields' strengths. And you saw it throughout the course of the preseason in those 3 games or parts of 3 games that he played. A lot of rollout, play action, moving the pocket, playing to his strengths and that mobility. And some great designs getting his targets open and scheming guys open the right way. I don't mean to pile on Matt Nagy, because Lord knows everybody did that the last 4 years, but that was trying to fit Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky to an extent within that scheme. Now with Justin Fields, is Luke Getsy building this offense around him and setting the scheme to his abilities. And I see him trying to, talking about Fields, to bring along these receivers, this new supporting cast, and get these guys on the same page with him. I'm really excited, because I think you're going to see the kind of growth you want of a Bears quarterback. And you might come out of the season, win or loss record, whatever that may be, feeling really good about where the Bears are going with Justin Fields.
And it looks to me like the Bears defense should be pretty good this year, especially with Roquan Smith back in the fold. Maybe some questions in that secondary depth. But outside of that, it seems like there's enough talent, and with Matt Eberflus in charge, that this could be a pretty good defense.
Yeah, and to talk about that identity, I mean, the hits principle, you think about that defense, it's getting, 5, 6 guys to the ball at the end of a play and finishing a play the right way. That's the takeaways mindset. That's what Eberflus wants of this group. They've also got a young, revamped defense. This defense needed an overhaul compared to where they were. Obviously, that defense was fantastic in 2018, but fell off from there. They built the personnel around what Matt Eberflus wanted. I'm really intrigued to see where this group goes. A lot of talent in that secondary. Now, we talked about the lack of talent on offense, but they got some talent on defense now. They're going to keep building that thing forward. I'm really curious to see how the scheme provides for this group and how some of these young players emerge within it.
All right, Chris, finally, what do you think is the ceiling for this 2022 Bears squad, wins and losses wise?
Yeah, I know the number out in Las Vegas is 6.5. I think that's probably a pretty good number. I think they're more likely to go over than under, though. I think that they could win 7 or maybe even 8 games. They really kind of get the most out of this team. Look, it's not a super tough schedule. You got some tough games on there, of course, but a lot of games you should be able to win. And I'm telling you, Matt, when you got a team that's committed to playing hard and playing the right way, you win a lot of games that you're not supposed to win. You steal some of these games and you surprise some teams. And I don't think they're a playoff team by any means, but I think they're a team that's going to play some pretty decent football, especially towards the stretch run of the season when you kind of get these young guys developing and build this thing out the right way. I think there's some reasons for hope this season and looking beyond.
All right, thanks so much for joining us, Chris. Appreciate your time. And I touched on it earlier, but one more time, tell people where we can check out your stuff.
670 The Score and 670thescore.com.
All right, thanks so much, Chris Evan. Appreciate your time. And thank you for joining us this afternoon on the CBS News Chicago stream, talking about the big news of the day. Bears president and CEO Ted Phillips retiring after 39 seasons with the organization. This will be his 40th, stepping down at the end of the year.